Hello, BookTube. It's the end of August, and all over BookTube, people are making their August wrap-ups. I like those videos. I love watching what everybody read during the month of August, and I want to participate, but I read 121 books in the month of August, and that's not even finished yet. I'm hoping to hit 125 by the time the month is actually over, and that's too many books for a video, for a wrap-up video. So I made some notes. I did a wrap-up a couple of times recently, and you seem to like it, of just a sort of a look back at the month of August. And some books that I'll list them all down below. Some books that I wanted to shout out one last time before we barrel on into September. So I want to start off with our first book is 99 Glimpses of Princess Margaret by Craig Brown, which is the American title of a book that came out in the UK last year. It's his biography of Princess Margaret, the sister of Queen Elizabeth II, but it's unconventional. He hauls in accounts from everywhere. It's a prismatic effect. It's not a straightforward, stately narrative. Instead, it's a little glimpse here, a slightly longer glimpse there, some positive, lots of negative, taken from all the time periods of her sad and thwarted life, and it makes for mesmerizing reading. It's just amazing. I read the UK edition, then I got the American edition, read that as well, and had a chance to review it. And I do recommend it, even if you don't usually read royal biographies. It's because it's not like any other royal biography. Then number two would be a book that I think we saw on this channel. I'm going to read the title here because the title is a mouthful. I wouldn't have called it this, but I understand the reason why. It's the 2020 Commission Report on the North Korean Nuclear Attacks Against the United States. That's the title of the book. It's by Jeffrey Lewis. And now that I think about it, I'm not 100% sure that I got it in August, and I read it and loved it in August, but it might not be coming out in August. I'll check. I'll note that down below. But the author just imagines every last little detail of a small-scale nuclear attack on the United States in the year 2020, and writes the book as a sort of an official government report of those attacks. And it's harrowing, mainly because of how likely it is, because of how believable it is. There's nothing in the book that is, flying a blimp into the Super Bowl on New Year's Eve or anything like that. All of it is easily possible. So if you like that kind of thing, sort of counterfactual, what-if, extrapolation type fiction, not even really call it science fiction, then this is a real good book to hunt down and find. And I don't know, with a title like that, usually a title that has 15 words is not going to succeed all that well. But I also don't know what kind of marketing will be done on the book. But if it's not out yet, I apologize. That would be a wrinkle in our August wrap up. But I recommend it anyway. And if it comes out later on, I'll recommend it again. Then let's see here. Number 3 is something we've seen on this channel before. It's Earl Swift's book, Chesapeake Requiem, and it's about a ridge of land in the Chesapeake Bay that is in a perfect choke point for the migration of blue crabs to make for a booming crab industry. And slowly, those islands, that spit of land has become a string of islands, and slowly those islands have been disappearing. And they're not, wooded marshland. They've had paved streets, big 4-star hotels, cinemas, schools, post offices, and lots of people. And this is a story of Tangier Island, which is disappearing. It's not just that its way of life is disappearing. The place itself is disappearing. When I first heard about the book, I think on this channel, I thought, well, okay, that might be good for regional history. Certainly if you live anywhere near the Chesapeake, you'll want to read this book, but it was so much more than that. The author very wisely concentrates directly on the details of the people's lives, which the more specific he concentrates on the specifics of their lives, remembering schoolhouses that are now, 30 feet underwater, the more universal it feels. So it was a remarkable job, so I wanted to recommend it. And then the next one, is YA. And it's YA done with a great deal of humor. The kind of frantic, over-the-top humor that, when you think about it, really ought to be a defining aspect of YA. It really ought not to be so incredibly serious all the time. Anyway, this is a book called We Regret to Inform You by Ariel Kaplan. And it's the story of a young woman named Misha who for the last, she's in high school, she's applying to colleges, and she's applying to her dream schools, and then she has some safety schools, including schools that she can't dream that she would ever go to. And the last words that she's expecting when she opens any letter in the response season from those schools is a letter that starts with, "We regret to inform you." She is just expecting. She has devoted every fiber of her entire waking life for most of her last 3 years to getting into the school of her choice. And the novel starts off with the unthinkable. She doesn't get into her. Not only does she not get into the school of her choice, she doesn't get into any of her schools. And because it's the 21st century, she simply refuses to believe that. She assumes that there's some nefarious plot, and she enlists her school's scorned little subgroup of brainiacs to help her sniff it out. And the whole thing is wonderful. From start to finish, wonderful. And the kind of YA wonderful that you don't have to be YA to enjoy. That's my favorite part of the best YA, is when it's just a book. It stars teenage characters in teenage settings with teenage concerns. But anybody can read it and love it. That's the kind of YA I really like, and this is just a perfect example of it. So, and then the next one I think we've seen on this channel before. It's Keith O'Brien's book Fly Girls, all about the pioneering women of aviation. Not just Amelia Earhart. It could almost be the title of the book. It's about all sorts of aviatrixes that you've never heard of, who faced exactly the kinds of offhand casual sexism and discrimination that you would imagine 100 years ago at the birth of aviation, and who, despite that, pushed the boundaries of the whole thing, of the whole field, and all sorts of ways, not just in the planes, but on the planning field and behind the scenes. The author does a terrific job of bringing these people to life. A terrific job, really, making sure that Amelia Earhart doesn't steal the show, and she doesn't. This is it's a terrific work of popular nonfiction, but it's also begging to be made into a movie. Oh my God, what a movie it would make! Oh my. But anyway, the next one is it's a bit of a tough sell, but I'm going to recommend it anyway because I liked a lot more of it than I disliked. It's Attention by Joshua Cohen, the novelist, and this is a collection of long, sometimes navel-gazing, sometimes pointless, sometimes meandering, sometimes arrogant, nonfiction meditations of his. So it's not a novel, but it reminded me of in a previous look back video like this. I did a recommendation for a memoir written by a novelist, and in that recommendation I said the key that makes it so good, so accessibly wonderful, is that the memoirist doesn't forget to use the effectiveness of novel writing. And the same thing is true in this Joshua Cohen book. Attention he's just a terrific writer. I guess is the short way of what I'm saying, is that he's a terrific writer. And this book will really, really intrigue you. This is one of the ones on the list here where I might suggest that you borrow it from the library first and see if it really speaks to you. And if it really does, then you will still have time to go and get it in your bookstore. It's one of the hardest recommendations on this list because it's extremely intricate, it's extremely heavyweight, and it's also at times extremely annoying. So and I'd appreciate it if none of you would say that also applies to this channel. You okay? Eyes on the prize. All right. The next one I have recommended before many times. I'm going to recommend it this one last time, and then you won't hear anything more from me about it until it comes out in paperback. And that's Meg, Jo, Beth, Amy by Anne Boyd Rioux, which is a book about Little Women. It's a book about Louisa May Alcott's Little Women. And not just the origin of the novel, and not just writing about the novel itself, what goes on in the novel, what it means, what's memorable, what's interesting, what's lamentable, but also everything else, the after effects, the reception, the effect on Alcott's life and on the life of everyone around her, the testimony of readers down through the ages, just in the small but wonderful little subgenre of books about specific books. So not about a library, not about my life in reading, but about a specific book that aren't literary criticism. They aren't a school of formal literary criticism. Rather, they're just a one book, concentrating on one book. In that small genre, this is a gem, an absolute gem. And I can say without any doubt at all that you will love it, even if you don't particularly love Little Women, because that's true for me. I've read Little Women, and I liked it. I want to reread it, but I know exactly what edition of it that I want, and I haven't come across it yet. There's a big annotated edition with a white dust jacket of Little Women. That's the one I want, and the publisher, for some reason, never sent it to me. Either an advanced copy or an unfinished copy, so I've never actually held it in my hand, but that's the one I want to reread Little Women with. So I will, sooner or later I will find that copy, and then I will reread it. But in the meantime, the book was a revelation. Just page after page. Anecdotes that will make you smile, anecdotes that will make you think. Just wonderful. I'm not gonna formlessly gush about it anymore. I've already spoken about it quite a bit. I highly, highly recommend it. And if Little Women had a profound personal effect on you as a reader and a person, like it had on so many people in this book, you absolutely have to read this book. so we'll stop with the Little Women stuff for now. So the next one is Into the Hands of the Soldiers by New York Times reporter David Kirkpatrick, and it's a big soup-to-nuts history of the Arab Spring and the revolution in Egypt, the voting in Egypt, and the bittersweet outcome. The candidate that the people chose was put aside by the military, in favor of the military. and it all happened on President Obama's watch. And the thing that one of the most striking, it's an amazing history on its own from start to finish. This author, God knows what kind of danger he risked to talk to everybody involved. But it's all great as narrative reporting. But one of the elements in it that struck me the most was how tough it is with the Obama administration, who had to face this whole thing as it was happening, and who had a pretty clear... there was a pretty clear right and wrong in this situation, even as complicated as it was, right from the beginning. They had a pretty clear idea of what was right and wrong, and they didn't act accordingly. And the reason I guess that surprised me is because in 2018, the Obama administration seems like just a lost paradise. It seems almost traitorous for someone to write negatively about it, even though there's a lot of negative stuff to write about it. It seems almost treasonous to do that, because 60-70% of the country would gladly go back to those times. In fact, they'd sacrifice a lot to go back to those times from the mad, lowbrow criminal chaos that the country is in now. So that element, that the author would be so harsh with the Obama administration, was oddly refreshing. So if those of you who like your political books, and current affair books, and who like it when a later work of history or reportage looks back at a relatively recent event and sorts it out for you, this is one of those books. And also, I can't stress this enough. Accidentally, I don't think the author was trying to do this, but accidentally, this is also one of the first major books about the Obama administration. It's not the book subject, but still. Then we'll move on from the super serious to something a little less serious. Seaweed Chronicles by Susan Hand Shetterly, which is a slim and lyrically written book about seaweed. She studies seaweed off the coast of Maine, but she learns all there is to know about it, and it's one of those kinds of nature/science books where you had never thought before that anyone could even write a whole book on whatever the subject is, whether it's termites or beavers or whatever, much less that book would be really good. And it is really good. It is poetically fascinating from start to finish. All about seaweed, what it is, how it grows, its different varieties, its history, in connection with human industry, seaweed harvesting, that sort of thing, its potential. Just fascinating. The kind of book where you not only start it and immediately realize that you're going to learn something on every page, but you also realize that you're going to love learning something on every page because the author is a tremendously welcoming in her prose style. Then the next one is Through Two Doors at Once by Anil Ananthaswamy, and it refers to the double slit experiment, and I think I've already lost probably 90% of you. There's a very famous experiment in physics of a wall with two little slits in it and a receptor wall just beyond. And what happens when you pass light through those little slits? And then what happens when you pass a single photon through just one of those slits? And we won't get hugely into detail now. This is for your science readers out there, definitely, obviously. But I don't want to get into huge detail now. The import of that double slit experiment, what light does when you start reducing it to its very basic components, to a single photon, defies reality as we understand it, and maybe defines reality as we understand it. What that experiment shows, and it's been repeated ad nauseum, there's no mistake of perception involved. What that experiment shows is a fundamental crack right down to the basis of how humans understand reality. And this book does a great job with the experiment, with the duplications, with the implications, and with a basic primer of quantum mechanics. So if that's your thing, it has been my thing lately. I try never to base a popular book now on quantum mechanics, but if that's your thing, if science doesn't put you off too bad, I do very much recommend it. And keep in mind, again, I will note all of these things down below, so you don't have to pause the video. Then the next one is a romance. It's Forbidden Night with the Prince by Katheryn Albright. And it's part of the Harlequin historical run. Every month, Harlequin Romance does a number of historical novels, and this one is about a woman who believes she is cursed. She believes that she carries a curse of never finding true love, and she marries, or she challenges that curse with an Irish prince, whose descriptions in the book certainly differentiate him. Let's put it gently. Differentiate him from every other Irish prince known to history, and the cover does as well. But the book, if you like romance novels, if you like historical romance novels, and you like the kind where it's just a bolt, where it's well done, it's concisely done, and it gets the job done, you're gonna love this book. And it also gives me a chance. It also gives me a chance to give a shout out to Sarah at Not Just Romance Novels, my soul sister, Sarah, whose channel is called Not Just Romance Novels and is yet 99% romance novels. And it's a wonderful channel. Chatty, welcoming, inviting, despite the presence of an enormous and obviously evil black cat. She epitomizes what I talk about on this channel all the time, which is a booktuber who will simply look at the camera and talk to you about books or anything else, and who, I don't know if it's true or not, but she certainly seems fairly comfortable on camera, and fun and funny. And the reason that I want to shout her out is because she's within hailing distance of 1,000 subscribers, and I'd like it if that changed. I'd like it if she hit that big number. I think it would please her immensely. So anyway, I'll also link her channel down below. But then the next one is a YA novel. It's The Prodigy by John Feintstein, who some of you will know as a sports writer. A Good Walk Spoiled is his gazillion-selling book about golf. And this is about golf as well. The Prodigy is about a teenage boy who is an obvious super talent in the sport. And the novel dramatizes the choices and the pressures that face such people in any sport, where the pressure is, do you stay amateur in order to reap the most prestigious trophies from the amateur circuit, or do you go pro for the money? And this book has two. The boy in this book is caught between two more or less father figures, one of whom is his actual father, who pretty obviously wants the money. He's pretty nakedly pressuring the boy to go pro. Your face on a Wheaties box, endorsements and sponsorships and whatnot. And the other is a secret professional coach. The boy's actual coach hires someone else, a former professional golfer, to sort of shadow coach him through not so much the sport, but the intricacies of what to do with your career in the sport. And before I read it, if you'd have told me that I would be fascinated by a book about golf, a novel about golf, especially if you'd have told me that a novel could make golf, the actual physical process of golf, fascinating to read on the page turning, I wouldn't have believed it. But 2018 is a year of reading surprises for me, and this is one of them. So I highly recommend it if you like reading YA. But this is again another example of we regret to inform you where this is another example where it doesn't really matter whether you have a taste for YA or not. The only reason I think we usually use that disclaimer, if you like YA, is because we're compensating for how bad most modern YA is. How stupidly hormone-driven and parent-hating it is. How cliche and jumpy and Hank Greenish it is. And then it's not all like that. It's not all YA is like that. It has a long history as a genre, and this is an excellent example. And I will find out, actually, I shouldn't actually use his name as a derogatory adjective because I'm going to find out, I think, either today or tomorrow, whether or not Hank Green himself writes YA that way. I have a copy of his book that's almost here. I'm as soon as it gets here, I'm going to read it right away, and then I'll know. So The Prodigy, I do recommend it as YA. The next one is a translated novel, translated from the Korean. It's I want to get this right. It's The Court Dancer by Kyung-Sook Shin, and it's translated from the Korean by Anton, and it's about excuse me. Boy, there's just no way to avoid a sneeze that's coming. There's no way to talk your body out of it. Anyway, it's about the final years of the Korean Empire, before the modern world crashed it to pieces, before it disappeared. It was opulent and powerful and intricate, and it's the story of a court dancer who is a favorite of the Empress, and she's exquisitely talented at the incredibly intricate traditional dances of the Korean court. And she catches the eye unwittingly, she catches the eye of a diplomat from France, who the plot has a cascade of twists to it. That's one of the things that makes it so incredibly good to read. Another one is that I don't know Korean, of course, but this felt very much like a very smooth translation. But I don't want to give away any of the major plot turns. But the dancer goes back to Belle Epoque France with the diplomat, and the novel beautifully dramatizes her life in Korea before she does that, and then we shift registers completely, and it beautifully dramatizes her life there. And in a novel like this, that when the main character changes worlds like that, that the novel is going to have her return to her old world eventually, either permanently or for a visit, and that there will be tragedy every step of the way. This is not a happy book, but I loved it. I thought it was exquisite. It made me wish that I could read the original, not, as is usually the case, because I didn't trust the translator. In this case, I do trust the translator. It felt completely perfectly smooth. No, it made me want to read the original because there are things that translation can't do. And it certainly makes me want to read more of this author in translation. So The Court Dancer is historical fiction, but it's beautifully done. Then the next one is an anniversary. It's Stellaluna by Jannell Cannon. For its 25th anniversary, if you can believe that. It's been 20 years since Stellaluna appeared. I don't know if you can see in this room. Stellaluna is actually in this room. Can you see Stellaluna right up there? Up in your... just follow my finger there. Right there, up in that corner, there's a little stuffed Stellaluna which is sticking out of the shelf, because 25 years ago when this book appeared, it was a huge sensation. Everybody loved it. It's about a bat who goes astray, gets lost, and meets strangers along the way, and it's about that bat's gentle adventures, and you know, both the wonder of meeting new people and the sort of hope of going back home. And it became a hit. An absolute hit as a children's picture book. It was reproduced in a little board book. There was a big stuffed Stellaluna. There was a little stuffed Stellaluna, and you can't tell from the Stellaluna on the shelf, but the wings have a little spot of Velcro so that you can close Stellaluna's wings over something and hang her from something. And it's a children's classic by now. It's utterly delightful. So the fact that it has a 25th anniversary edition means that there'll be a new printing, and some of you who may have been little kids 25 years ago might have kids of your own now. I don't want you to miss it. I don't want you to miss hearing about it. Then the next one is it's a little bit on the wonky side. Those of you who love science fiction will probably not want to miss it. Those of you who don't, this is not an entry point book at all. I just thought I'd mention it because I loved it. It's called So Say We All by Edward Gross. And it is an oral history of Battlestar Galactica. Not just the original, 1970s TV show with Lorne Greene, but also, very briefly, the ill-advised 1980s sequel to the TV series, and then gloriously the revision, the total soup to nuts revision that was done on sorry, put this inside a pillow. the revision done for Sci-Fi, for the Sci-Fi Network, that is just brilliant, just brilliant. And So Say We All, the title comes from that revised series. So if you fell in love with the new Battlestar Galactica starring Edward James Olmos, then you're going to love this book. You're going to like the history anyway. I think that the new revamp, the new revisioning of Battlestar Galactica sent a lot of people back to the original show. But this is the ultimate behind-the-scenes account of the whole Battlestar Galactica property, told really well. The people involved who are interviewed and give their stories obviously feel as passionately about it as the fans do. So if you're a sci-fi fan, especially if you're a Battlestar Galactica fan, this is a book you have to have. Then the next one is contemporary fiction. It's The Line That Held Us by David Joy, who is an author who I've been up and down with him. His first two books, his first book was a debut. I was willing to grant it all the leeway in the world. It didn't please me, but I let it go. And the second book, once you have a second book, I'm not willing to give you all the leeway in the world. And the second book I thought was monstrously flawed, just from start to finish. Just pandering is the word that came to mind, even though I don't think that was on the author's mind. I don't think he was thinking that at all. It's set in Appalachia, the second book anyway, deals with people who are commonly referred to as white trash, meth dealers, meth takers, meth resellers, that sort of thing. So I was guarded for the third book. When The Line That Held Us was announced, and then when it appeared, I felt guarded. And I read it, and it's terrific. It's just terrific. It's a very simple, tragic premise. A young man in the Appalachians is out at night hunting. He's losing the light. He hears what he thinks is a boar, fires, and accidentally kills a human who had been rustling around on someone else's property. So they were both poaching. And the man who kills the killer, the accidental killer, panics and decides to call his best friend, the only person he can call, he knows won't call the police, to bring a backhoe, essentially, and bury the body. His plan, in panic, is just to tell nobody. This was a horrible accident, but he cannot say that it was a horrible accident because he knows the boy he killed. And he knows the boy's brother. And the boy's brother is a gigantic bear of a man who is psychopathic. And the accidental killer knows perfectly well, the police might acquit me, but the brother never will. The brother will kill me if he finds out this happened. So I don't want him to find out. We just want to bury the body. his friend agrees. They bury the body, but of course the whole thing starts to unravel. And the book is about what happens to indissoluble bonds. It's about the mechanics of indissoluble bonds, whether it's between those two best friends or whether it's between the homicidal brother and his dead brother, who was the only person who meant anything to him in the world. And it's... what have you got in your mouth? Oh, there you go. Sorry, constant puppy patrol here. It's really, really good. I strongly recommend it as a work of contemporary fiction. It puts on no airs. It tries no silly, precious narrative hijinks. It's just beautifully written, stark, and gripping. you really, I doubt you will stop reading once you start. Then the next one is Big Biography. We've seen it on this channel before. I've mentioned it. I've praised it. I praised it for the Christian Science Monitor as well. It's Raymond Arsenault's Big Biography of Arthur Ashe, the tennis star. Only when you finish the book, you don't think of Arthur Ashe as a tennis star anymore. You think of him as so much more than that. It is a portrait in the round of a great American. And I want to mention it just this one last time, like with the Little Women book. I won't mention it again until it comes out in paperback, but I wanted to praise it one last time because it's still in bookstores and it is terrific. It is just a monument of a biography. Critical when it needs to be, but sympathetic generally, and also the last word on the subject. It's the pattern of 2018's biographies for me, is that I'm not only reading great biographies of people that I would never read a biography on where I thought, but all of these seem to be definitive. They seem to be just epic works of biography on people who are only barely dead, who are still living in living memory. To have great biographies, one after another, appearing about such people it's unusual to me. So I'm loving it. I'm having a blast of a time. But this is one of the best ones. So I highly recommend it. Then the next one is it's a kid's book. It's a picture book. It's Adrian Simcox Does Not Have a Horse. It's written by Marcy Campbell with illustrations by Corinna Lueken. And it's the story of a boy who tells everybody that he has a horse, and it's a beautiful horse, and he loves his horse. And there's a girl at school, Chloe, who everybody else just listens, and they don't particularly care one way or another, but it bothers her because she's seen the little house that he lives in, the dingy little house. She's seen the dingy little surroundings. She doesn't believe him. She doesn't believe that he has a horse, and it bothers her that he keeps saying it. She becomes very strident about it, about calling him out on what she thinks is an obvious lie. And the conclusion? I know this is very cliche, but the conclusion will just warm your heart. It will. It is, you read this book and you think, wow. Like with Stellaluna, you read this book and you think, people are going to be reading this in 25 years. It's that good. It doesn't miss a step at all. So I was just going to finish up by saying if you want to get a book for your kids, but I think by now you all know my dirty secret, which is that I love all the kinds of books that I'm enthusing about myself. I don't enthuse about them because I'm thinking about some ideal audience. I enthuse about them because I like them. I have a whole collection of children's picture books and love them all dearly. So yes, it will be perfectly good for you to have for a kid, but also for yourself. You will love it. And then the last one that we come to is it's a book called The Interrupting Chicken and the Elephant of Surprise. It's this. It's by David Ezra Stein, and it's a sequel to his The Interrupting Chicken. And it's just about the best thing I read in August. It's the little chicken. The little chicken comes home and tells his parent that at school we learned all about the elephant of surprise. That's such a key factor in so many books. And the parent says, oh, no. I know what you mean. I'm glad you had fun at school, but what you mean is the element of surprise. And the little chicken says, no, our teacher said it plain as day. It's the element of surprise. And the elder chicken says, well, no, little chicken, if you pull a book off the shelf, I'll show you what I mean. You just heard it wrong, that's all. What if we pick the ugly duckling? See how lovely those illustrations are, how old-fashioned they are. We've got the ugly duckling on the pond. See, in this book you aren't going to encounter any... Surprise! I'm an elephant! Needless to say, the parent is a little confused. What? So we pick another book. Why shouldn't we? Well, the odds it'll happen again. Let's pick Rapunzel. Isn't that lovely? The traditional story of Rapunzel who lets down her golden... Surprise! I'm an elephant! It turns out that the whole book is about the elephant of surprise. And to put it mildly, I recommend it. And that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up. Sorry for how long the video is, but that is my August wrap up for 2018. And I'm gonna wrap this up for now because this is incredibly long. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.